Happy Team List Tuesday for round 2, guys. We are going to be doing a regular video of a Tuesday morning, and I do hope that you have checked out both Mitch and Matt's video together. The big discussion on both their squads, different players, different strategies. I think it's one of the most important videos you'll get this week. So get in, enjoy that, learn about fantasy and how to perform really well. You know, Matt finished just outside the top 100 with me 2 years ago. Mitch has gone 60 odd into 21st the last 2 years. So get in there, learn from those guys. It's going to be a weekly video from Mitch. And in this one here, on a weekly basis, on a Tuesday at around lunchtime, you're going to get the 3 teams to target in this video, the 3-game impact, I should say. You're going to get my tips for the week, and you're also going to get the private group and the team that we've got together there, how we went, and potential trades in that squad. So stick around to find out about that. With the teams to target, I have adjusted. Thank you to Phil and to Scoop for putting this together. We do have the ladder. I just fixed up my thoughts around that ladder, and what it does is put them into different color coordination. So the top 4's in red, then we go to orange, then we go to yellow, then we go to green from there, based on the next 4, and the last 5. And I moved Cowboys down there. This was Scoop's ladder, and I've just changed a few things around to make it a little bit easier to discuss the teams that are having tough runs over the next few, and the other teams that have the easier one. And the Titans finally come into the fray. They come up against the Dogs, Newcastle, and Roosters over the next 3, and it does open up a little bit further after that, so we don't have them in my top few teams to target. But these two, I think, this Dogs one, I think it'll be a fairly close game, pretty similar with the Knights. So not expecting big blowouts for attacking players. And that's kind of what you're looking at here is, are their attacking players going to get blown off the park if they come up against a really strong side? And, as we saw Manly storm these types of guys, Penrith, obviously, it's hard to score against them in Fantasy and Supercoach. And Titans there have a really solid start. Storm, they've got the buy into Penrith, so they're a team that I would look to target from round 4 onwards and not before then. Dragons, they do have the South this week, which is nice, and you could get some good scores. If you're looking at Tuipulotus and those types of guys, it could be a nice one this week. And then the buy in round 3, followed by Melbourne in round 4, and it does get a little bit nicer. So for them, you're not looking at Dragons players, in my opinion, this week before a buy. With the Knights, they come up against Dolphins, which will be fun, and Titans will be 2 fun matchups as well before their buy in round 4. And following that, it does get a little bit harder. But over the next few, I don't know if you can buy any Knights right now. To me, you had to start with them and not go in and purchase from round 2 or round 3 with their buy coming up. And for the Wars, it is Manly into Roosters and Tigers. So the next 2, following this Manly clash, which I think will be pretty tough, will be against some slightly easier opponents. And hopefully the Roosters, for their sake, can sort things out. But I've plopped them in that, that second to last section there in the yellow. And they're, so just got to get through this week. But it's going to be a tough one, I think, unless they can really make some improvements this week and Manly fall off a little bit. The Dogs come up against Titans, Para, and the Sharks over the next 3. So they've got a pretty tidy draw into the Knights following that before their bye. So you can still definitely target Bulldogs, but there's not too many on that list. And Satili Tupanua is probably not that guy. The Cowboys, they come up against Cronulla and Brisbane, followed by Canberra and Penrith. So it's pretty disgusting, and you would have actually had Manly as one of their easier clashes in that first 5 rounds, and they got absolutely spanked by them. So Cowboys are not a team I would be targeting. If you've got them, hold on. If you don't buy. The Eels are up next, and they've got through their really tough one, and now it's Tigers, which will be a bit better. Canterbury Bulldogs, and then Manly. So still some tougher opponents in there, but the game this week will be a much closer affair. But again, Eels guys, how many of them do you want to target this week? Probably not many. We're moving on to teams with later buys now, with the Eagles having a buy in round 9. So they're fair game, completely fair game. Warriors into Canberra into Para. So that 4th matchup against Para, without Moses now, becomes a lot easier. So instead of 3 games that were fairly, not too hard to start, it becomes 4 now. And they're one of the top teams to target over the next 3-week period. But then it is followed by Melbourne and Cronulla, and then Penrith before their bye. So they're going to have some nice ones at the start, followed by some tougher ones a little bit later. And that's where guys like Olukwatu, Garrick, Turbo, all these players were really good options this week. So to start in round 1. And you can still buy, but just be aware of that following three to 4 game stretch. Roosters, they come up against Penrith this week, so no one I'd jump in and target, but then the following ones are Warriors, Titans, and South, so a bit easier for them. With the Panthers, fairly fixture-proof, obviously, but Roosters this week will be a nice one for them, followed by Melbourne. That's going to be a hectic clash, and then it does get easier with South, Cowboys, and Dolphins, so anyone from the Panthers are very much fair game to target, especially this week against a slightly easier side. Tigers, they've got one of the nicer draws as well. Parramatta into Dolphins into Warriors before Brisbane. So good 3 rounds here for Tigers. For the Bunnies, it is Dragons, it is Cronulla, and it is Penrith. So not a team you want to be targeting, and I'll definitely be jumping off David Moale, but a pretty solid, and you'd imagine half close matchup this week. I will be tipping the Dragons, which we'll see in the next section. But Rabbitohs, not super excited about their draw at all. Broncos, a really nice setup now. Canberra's going to be a fun game, I think, followed by Cowboys and the Dolphins and the Tigers. So a nice stretch for the Broncos and a team that you could definitely target this week. Dolphins, you've got Newcastle into the Tigers, into Brisbane Broncos. A not too bad of a setup. If you're targeting middle forwards or edges, I just found out information about Connolly Lemuelu fracturing his eye socket. And with Finn out this week, is it Oren Keeley season? Or are they going to move like Felice or Kenny Bromwich out there and maybe have Keeley on the bench? It's going to be a 1 week play, but I do see Finifuriaki then as a pretty good option from round 3. It is going to be against the Tigers in round 3 as well, and he could have a nice showing. So hold on to him if you did start with Finn. It should work out pretty well. Shame for Lemuelu to drive. He had to drive the whole way home with the fractured eye socket because he can't get changes of pressure, which is pretty tough there. Sharkies, they also have a pretty good schedule with Cowboys into South into the Bulldogs. So not too tough for the rest of the way. They've got their Penrith matchup out of the way and expect a lot of their guys like Nikora, Wilton, their outside backs, Iro and the like, Malatalo, all of them, to have really good little stretches of games here. And then the Raiders, you got the Broncos this week, which should be tougher, but then Manly, again, fairly tough into Cowboys and Cronulla. So attacking players for Raiders, not super ideal. I don't think it affects guys like Horsburgh, who's going to be a big target this week. Tom Starling, we just saw that it looks like Brayley's going to be signing with them. Is it going to be immediate though? Starling's a pretty interesting option this week, that's for sure. So those guys, they're a fine draw without being absolutely ridiculous. So I put in my rankings as the best draws, was the 4 best draws in the comp, but you can kind of work that out yourself as well as guys you want to target, especially on the Supercoach side, with attacking sort of runs. It's a hard one to put too much stock into. We know who the top teams are. We're unsure on the middle teams. Obviously, we can deduce what we think and what I have into those color coordinations, but it's going to change week to week at the moment, and I'm adjusting according to that. So that's that one. Pretty simple. Let's get into my tips. So I did get 6 out of 8 last week, a solid outing without being spectacular, but I do feel this one is a much nicer and easier week, even though last week wasn't too hard either. Just with the separation of some of the top teams and some of the lesser teams, but Knights I think should get the job done against the Dolphins this week at home. They just got the signing news of Dylan Brown as well, which is absolutely wild that that's actually happening, and he's told all his teammates that he's going to be going. For the Warriors, up against the Seagulls, you can't tip away from the Eagles as much as, this could be a nicer showing for the Wars. Penrith have to tip them against the Roosters. Dragons I have against winning up against the Bunnies, and they should play better than last week for sure. And hopefully Jacob Little gets some more time on the park and they don't have any other big injuries in game. I've tipped them by 8 at the moment. I think it could be a little bit more, but I think that's fairly safe after they were down by 20 in that game against the Dogs. Sharkies should devour the Cowboys. Broncos should get a nice win against the Raiders. When I say a nice win, probably like an 8-point win, I'd say, just the way they're playing at the moment. The Raiders were good and they're at home. But if it was going to be any type of upset this week, I think Raiders could do a job on the Broncos. And I find it hard to see any of the other teams have a big upset, just because the Raiders, I think, were pretty good in round 1, even though it was against the Wars, who did struggle. How are they going to stop this Broncos juggernaut if it keeps going? That's for sure, especially when they look very similar to what they did in 2023. The Tigers I have beating the Eels at this point. They didn't look very good at all, and the Tigers really fought hard. So they didn't get the win last week. I think they can make it happen, but they do need to have some attack. The Eels still managed to score 3 tries, and the Tigers could only manage 2 in their game. And at this stage, after that win, I feel like the Bulldogs will have a fair bit of firepower and confidence and excitement coming out of that, and they are playing at Belmore Oval against the Titans in their first game of the season. So they look pretty solid in that second trial. They look bad in the first, so you can't tip away from the Dogs at home, in my opinion there. So that's my tips for the week. Let me know in the comments where you're at in that one. And then the private group squad. So the consensus team, we've gone through and spoken about what potential trade we want to do, and we'll show you that in a second. And then in the trades video at the end of the week for my team, I'll do an update on the private group one, if there are any differences from that. But a 916 in round 1 puts us in the top 9,000 at 8898 with some really solid scores across the board, with Watson having Yo, Horsburgh and Terrell May to kick things off up top. Nafahu White, one of the better mid-range, 400, just over 400 guys. And Tom Gilbert with his 65 was awesome. So very, very happy to own those two. Metcalf was a bit of a downer. We had Cleary as captain. Lucas of 57 with Rob Toyer of 61 was great. Having Garrick's 55 was awesome. We looped in Tamale with Brimson. So we switched Marzu for Brimson. Picked up the 49 instead of the 52. But yeah, that was an easy one and an important one to do. Yongi with 28. And then on our bench was Mamazelis. It was Seyfarth, Tom Duffy, and Cam Munster with his 53. So overall, very happy with the setup. We did buy Jackson Purdue, which wasn't incredible, but it's fine. Jack Cole with 29, and then Sanders Smith with 44. And we end up in a pretty solid position, and I'm happy where the squad is at coming into round 2. And it's a very, very consensus before team lists at the moment trade of Luke Metcalf to Jamie Humphreys as the one trade. There's a little bit of chat around, trading out Purdue early, but it would only be for like a Stafford Toa or one of the other cheapies or something like that. But not super excited with that, just using that trade for kind of no reason. So in this front, that's the one trade. Humphreys will stay in the starting side. I've got the vice captaincy on Gilbert, which it could easily be on one of the Knights guys, like Lucas. I think we could put on the vice. It's just nice to put vice captain on a 50 plus type of scorer in an earlier game, just in case something happens with your captain, or if Isaiah Yo had the vice before, you could leave it on him for sure. But if there happens to be an issue in the squad and these two blokes get the flu or can't play or something like that, then you lose your captaincy and your vice. So that's where it's nice to put on something in the first game. But when you do have a Terrell May, an Isaiah Yo, these types of guys, it's it feels weird to not have the vice on them. But there has been instances in the past where something happens in the captain's run or something like that, and that player is injured, where at least with that first game, that they're playing, they're named an hour before, unless something happens in the warm-up. But again, you'll know by the time the game starts, you can change that. So that's where the vice captaincy sits usually. And team setup, we haven't changed anything else in the starting side. Just mucked around with a few things on the bench. And what you need to look at with looping, guys, is this first game, you've got the Knights and the Dolphins. And with that one, you could loop Dylan Lucas in the 5, muck around with that and have Tamale in the starting center jersey. We could put Tom Gilbert in the 5 as well. And with having Munster not playing this week, we don't know if like Purdue and those guys are going to make it yet, but Munster could slot in the 4 if you're happy with that score. And if he happens to get a HIA in the first minute, then you don't have to take one of those 2 scores, and you can play the other option in Seyfarth in that edge, or with Tamale in that center jersey. So that's where you could loop that one. Or we just stick with someone like Jack Cole, who plays in the 3rd game for the Panthers there, or Sanders Smith. You can pick one of those 2 guys, slot them in the 5 jersey, see how they go. If they don't go well, then you play someone else ahead in that 4 jersey and switch them out with Cam Munster. That's pretty simple how that one plays out. And yeah, we're not chasing too much apart from, if Humphreys is named, I've got him as a must-have. I had him, pretty well a must-have in round 1, but nothing changes in round 2 with a lower break-even, still a must-have. And yeah, I think the team looks pretty well set. Like, you've got guys like White with Butcher and Radley going to be out. He should play good minutes again and score pretty well. Gilbert, hopefully it can notch out a 50 or 52. 65 would be great, but he has to make 60 tackles for that one or get a try or something, in my opinion. And the rest of the team's good. You've got Garrick up against a pretty nice Warriors outfit for him. Lucas is in a good spot. AJ Brimson comes in against the Dogs, which will be fun. And, he's got some value. We should expect an improvement from that 29 from Seyfarth. Horsburgh should score well. Similar with May, Watson. And, Cleary. I think Cleary has to be the captain this week against a pretty lackluster team that he is coming up against in the Roosters at the moment. A much worse side than the Sharks right now. So I think that's where you need to go with captaincy this week is Nate, and there's not really anyone else that I would launch it on because he has that 100 upside. Terrell May, Isaiah Yeo are there. I'd have in this week. I'd probably have Terrell as the second best captain option over Isaiah Yeo, just with the quality of outfit they're going to come up against. He could score a try or something again, but Cleary with the dominance on the side and likely to improve the team this week, the Panthers, I think he has to be that captain. We'll leave it there, guys. Short and sharp for this video. You've got the 3-game impact. You've got my tips for the week, and you've got the update on how the private group consensus team went. Hope you guys have had a cracking start to your week, and I wish you guys all the best of luck with your teams out of Team List Tuesday this afternoon, and then get your questions in. And if you want to ask away in the comments, I'll try to get to some of them. I'll keep them nice and busy myself. So thanks so much, guys, and we'll catch you in the next video.